think we're good. We're live, baby. Say something in the chat if we're good. I believe we're alright. But, of course, I am Schmook. Welcome back to MCubed. We're here to talk about episode 8 of HBO's The Last of Us. And this episode was... it was so good. So good. So, again, I liked last week's episode, Left Behind, quite a bit. But... from that being probably like my least favorite episode, this one, I think it's my favorite one. I will say. Again, it's this episode, the first episode, and the episodes with Sam and Henry. Like this is what it brings me back to when I was playing this game. Hell, like 10 years ago when it came out, and it's. Now, I love this episode because what it did was show the true horror of and eeriness of what this world is. Like, of course, we've seen the clickers. We've seen some bad people, like, doing bad things. But now this is where you see the true, like, what does it take to survive in this world? You just have to be built differently. That's basically all it is to me. But yeah, like you just have to be built differently, and you know Ellie and Joel are. Like we of course we get introduced to David in this episode. When playing the game, I'm like, oh, where are they going with this storyline? Because one, Joel, he got terribly hurt, right? Where he got that stabbed wound, and it's like, all right, now Ellie's basically on her own, and like it's always been Ellie and Joel, right? And what this episode proves is that Ellie, she doesn't need Joel, but she craves Joel. You know, it's like she craves to have someone that looks out for her and truly cares, right? So in this episode, she's kind of getting manipulated a little bit, but she knows that Joel is real, like a real one. Like, he's not just trying to take advantage of Ellie. All he's trying to do is protect this girl that he has come to grips with the idea that, oh, I can open my heart again. And he does with Ellie. And especially after her saving his life after getting stabbed. So we get, okay, to get into the episode itself, right? We see that Ellie, it's wintertime. Joel is obviously not in a great place, right? Gunner? I agree. I think it is. I also agree it's the best episode. But like, because there's so much to it, right? But so we open it up, of course, with Ellie. She's hunting, right? And she kills this deer, and she runs into a couple guys. One of which is David, and the other which is actually Troy Baker, who actually voiced and did the mocap for Joel in the video games, right? So that's cool to see him. So basically, they're like, okay, we don't need to take your deer, but like we have a big group, and like you obviously don't have a big group, but your guy killed one of our guys, but we're willing to make a deal. So here, and Ellie's like, okay, I want medicine, so they do a little trade, and so Ellie's actually able to get back to Joel and give him medicine so he can fight this obviously huge infection in his gut, right, for being stabbed. So that's why Joel's able to eventually come back to grips after, of course, we get to the point where Ellie gets kidnapped by this group of guys. So Ellie gets kidnapped, and we get to a whole scene where hold on a second. Sorry about that. So anyway, we get to this one scene where Ellie is in a cage, right, which is straight from the video game, and which I really like, where it's just David talking to her, and that's where you're starting to be like, oh, this dude is creepy and he is messed up. Like, so it's where we find out that he's actually, like, they're cannibals. Like, so David's like the leader of this group. He's obviously a more like he's a smarter person. Like I like to consider him. He's not a real one, but he's not a dummy either. He's not like an NPC type of person. He's someone who's able to make the decisions that regular people can't. And so what I love, agreed, Gunner. Great line. Name's Ellie. The girl who broke your fucking finger. And I'm like, it's like, oh, Bella Ramsey went unbelievable in this episode. Like she killed it. She's doing such a great job as Ellie. But anyway, so I like this whole scene with David and Ellie. Of course, them talking. You get to understand who David is more so. Where like earlier on, he's like, oh, I was a preacher or I was a teacher, then I wanted to become a preacher, right? And it's like, okay, so this guy, he gives off a little bit of a creepy vibe, sure. But like he kind of passes as like, oh, he's an okay guy, right? Well, again, in this scene is where it's like, oh, I will do anything to keep my people alive, which includes any of them that don't make it. He will feed them to his people so they don't starve. So they're cannibals, right? And I love when Ellie just kicks the bull aside. Again, all this directly from game. She's like, I'm not gonna eat this, you sick fuck, basically, you know. And but then it gets to a point where he's trying to manipulate her mind a bit, being like, listen, like I see you as a leader. I see you as a strong-willed, fierce, violent person who will do what it takes to protect those he loves or she loves. And so he starts to get a little creepy, puts his hand on the jail cell, like the door to the jail, like cell, blah blah blah. Or cage, and then like Ellie puts her hand on there, and he's like being creepy about it, putting his hand on hers. Oh, agreed. So, what you just mentioned, of course, I agree. David did remind me. He's like a mix of the governor / Gareth from Terminus in The Walking Dead, right? Where the governor's definitely like a creep, pedophile type thing. Where Gareth from Terminus in the show, or in the comics, are still a cannibal group who just eats people, right? But of course, you don't understand what it means to be starving, right? Especially in this world, especially in the wintertime, where it's like, oh, you can't forage for, berries or any type of like vegetable, blah blah blah, or it's hard to hunt game. So it's like, oh shit, what are we gonna do? So if someone dies out, you might have to eat them. It's like, okay, it's terrible. But it's like, endure and survive, right? But you can tell that this guy was absolutely fucked from it. Like, from this scene alone, where the way he's talking to Ellie, like, he's definitely, like, thinking, like, oh, we can build this and have a bright future together. Being like, oh, you and me, I'm like, you're a sick fuck. This girl's 14 years old, dude. And you're, like, maybe earliest, like, 45, right? Maybe, like, he's probably in his 50s, but I mean, again, creepy. It's basically like the opposite of Joel, where this guy's gonna pretend to protect her, but he obviously just wants one thing. It's like, you can never trust someone like that, especially in the end of the world. That's someone you don't want to follow, yet all these people do follow him. Where the one that you want to lead is the one who doesn't want to lead, but is the best one for the job. Which would be like a Joel, right? And same with Rick in The Walking Dead, and any type of post-apocalyptic thing, right? Jesus talking about me. Oh, I agree, man. Like, again, he's just talking about how this guy was a preacher. He's dropping Bible quotes, and some middle-aged guy wanting to get with a 14-year-old. I'm like, dude, you do not believe in the Lord. You're a psycho. And you're a pedophile. And then we eventually get to Joel waking up, where we have a bunch of different guys looking for him throughout these houses, right? That's where I'm like, oh man, I'm ready for this part in the game, for the show, where it's like Joel's about to go completely animal. And I will say that's my biggest gripe with the episode, is that we don't get that full thing. Where, like, in the show or in the game, Joel has to go through hordes of these guys from this, like, this group, right? But I do still appreciate what they did, where you're able to see Joel take out one guy that's in his house, like he chokes him out and stabs like him in the back of the neck with a knife. I'm like, oh, that's gruesome. He's able to take out two guys, and the interrogation scene is straight from the video game. What I love so far, I saw this on Twitter. So there's something that people pointed out is like how almost every scene from the video game that is in the show, and they do quite well, that's almost identical, like maybe a slight difference, right? The scenes are flipped, right? So like I know, like just camera angle, right? It's interesting. If you just go and look up cutscenes of the video game, it's intriguing how they've done that. I think it's neat. It's just like that's like a little tidbit of information. But anyway, but I like how different Pedro's Joel is compared to Troy Baker's Joel, but it's still like that same guy who's like, I'm gonna do what it takes to save this person. But I loved him stabbing the guy in the kneecap. He's like, you're gonna tell me, and don't you dare lie, or I will pop your fucking kneecap right out. I'm like, oh my god, like this is the guy. I love Joel, man. And then also like the guy's just talking to be like, dude, he's like, and then Joel just grabs him by the back of the head. He's like, no, you're talking to me. And I'm like, oh man, this dude's a menace. Yeah, okay, so yeah, right, Gunner. So what Harris just said, yeah, Joel takes out like basically every man that's hunting for this guy, right? Which is pretty badass. It would have made quite an awesome action sequence, and that's what the show is somewhat lacking. But I think what that takes away is that Joel's a little bit more human in this, to me, than in the game, where it's like he's just a guy. In the game, he's literally possibly the best killer in the world, like where you can just take out these guys left and right, and there's like just like a whole horde of these guys. So it makes it a little more realistic, but still, you know, and obviously it would have been dope to see Joel just plow through this entire village of people just to save Ellie. But again, I do like this also is that it makes Ellie able to, I mean, again, in the game, Ellie's still able to protect herself without Joel's help. And that's what they portray in this. And I think they do a better job by not showing Joel just like completely wipe out a ton of people, where he takes out a few, which still shows he's a badass and capable of this. Where in next week's episode, I think we're definitely going to be getting that version of Joel that I don't think we've seen quite yet. But I think it's coming. I think that's kind of the whole build-up, like where this was kind of mostly like this was Ellie's episode, it wasn't Joel's. I think next week is a Joel. It's like, okay, this is Joel's mindset where he's at, his POV. So I look forward to next week's episode for sure. But anyway, so of course Joel finally gets to the town, and oh, okay, we still show how Joel's a complete animal, where he's like, oh, the guy's just like, I don't know anything more. He's like, and Joel's just like, oh, I believe him. And he just grabs like a pipe and just completely Negans this guy. And I'm like, oh man, Joel, you're just pissed here. He's just done. So that was cool to see. Loved seeing that. But anyway, now we'll get back to Joel or the Ellie with David. So again, she breaks his finger, but eventually they come back. Him and Troy Baker's character, David, and I can't remember the guy what the character's name is. I think it's Chris. I could be wrong. I probably am, but it sounds about right. But I'll just say Troy Baker's character. So they're taking her on the table. Okay, no, I completely agree. Like again, this is the real like. I'll get back to my point. Just gonna answer what Gunnar just said. So what I do, I agree completely with what you just said. It is to make Ellie shine, because again, season 2, if you played the games, it's going to be mostly an Ellie season, I feel. Unless they, you know, they could do a lot more with Joel, but who knows. Because there is a lot less Joel in the second game. It's mostly Ellie's story, where I think The Last of Us Part 1, which is the first video game, is mostly a Joel story, but it's also it's just getting to know Ellie, and this is where it's like it's trying to build her up as the character, but so is Joel. So anyway, um, so again, so we see Ellie. So David's about to like cut her up into pieces or whatever, right? And then so basically, uh, she reveals to David and Troy Baker's character that she's infected. So don't eat me because they're about to cut her up into pieces. Against whatever, I think it was Ellie or, oh no, it's that line after Ellie being like, "Oh, I'm the one who broke your finger," right? Where David goes, "How did you say it? Small little pieces." And I think that's huge line for the episode. But anyway, I'll get to that later. But again, so she shows that she's like not infected, but she's able to grab this meat cleaver and just totally mess up Troy Baker's character, which I think is kind of crazy to see Ellie is the one to take out the OG Joel, which I like seeing for sure. Which is going to be fascinating for the next episode, where it seems quite obvious that Ashley Johnson, who voiced and did the mocap for Ellie, how she's going to be taken out by a walker. Or a click or infected. Sorry, Walking Dead's always up in here. But so I think that's obviously what I think is going to happen. I think that's also poetic due to the fact that Ellie just can't get infected. So I like seeing that. Anyway, let's see. Where was I? Oh, so Ellie escapes, right? And then David's chasing her down, which I liked how it's very identical to the game where it gets to this point, right? Where they're in like this, it's kind of like I want to say like a tavern, but it's like just like a big eating square, again, just like an old-timey restaurant situation, right? Where it's like it's mostly wood or blah blah blah. So I like that whole sequence of Ellie just throwing this wood that's caught on fire, right? Like that she took from some fireplace, right? And then you see how quick this fire spreads, and then like David's like, "All right, don't run away from me," and stuff like that. And it's just this whole sequence, I am just terrified of this guy, where he has one goal in mind, one mission, is to take this girl out, like cause she's like, all right, well, you have to be lying, because no one who's infected tries this hard to survive. So he's like, you're full of it. Oh, that's awesome, Harris. That's awesome that you didn't know that was the guy who voiced Joel. Because he's a good actor. Troy Baker is awesome. He also does voice acting. Like him and Nolan North are literally the guys in the video game industry to voice characters. So it's cool to see him actually do some live action work, and he did a great job. I like. Of course, he's playing a completely different character, but he still does a great job. But anyway, so we get to this point where Joel's very close to Ellie's trail. He finds her backpack and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. So we know she's close. So we eventually get to this point where Ellie and David are like in a fight, right? And David's obviously winning at this moment. Like Ellie's a 14-year-old girl and this is a grown man. Ellie's tough. She's tough as nails, but what are you gonna do? Like she's not gonna be able to do much. So he's able to take her down, and it gets to a point where it's like, oh, he is this sick fuck, right? Where he's on top of her, holding her down, and he's like, I thought you knew me by now. Like, I like the struggle, or whatever he says. I'm like, oh, dude, that is a fucked line. Like, I'm watching this with my friends, and we're just like, all like, ugh, this guy's a sick bastard. Like, there's a guy where if I'm in the world scenario, I'm taking him out. Like, there's no way. So anyway, so Ellie, she gets lucky in this moment where it's terrifying, obviously, but Ellie, of course, she's big brain. She's smart. So when he's letting go of one of her arms to like unbuckle his pants or whatever, so he can so he can rape her, and it's like, ah, you hate to see that. And then she just goes back and grabs this meat cleaver, and she cuts him into tiny pieces. So I love going back to that line where she just so when he's on top of her, and her screaming, and she's obviously terrified. This from like Bella Ramsey is an unbelievable actress, and she's actually she's perfect as Ellie. But when she cuts him, she like, it's like, okay, he's dead, but she just keeps going and screaming. She's like, holy cow, like you sick bastard, like you need to go. And she's just, again, like this is one of the most terrifying things anyone can like experience. And of course she's just letting all of her anger and terror out on this sick puppy, right? this guy who does not deserve to live in this world. And she goes outside after that beautiful scene. Like the cinematography was great. It's also identical to the game, which I love seeing, except this is where it's a little bit different. In the game, Jill comes in to stop her from just keep hacking him up, and she's like, hey, Ellie, it's me. Where in this, it's like she doesn't stop until she's ready to stop, which I really like to see, because, I mean, of course, she should be able to let it all out in that moment. But anyway, she goes outside, and she, like Joel grabs her, and she's like, get away from me. Like, obviously, she's in complete shock. And then, like, Joel has to, like, grab her and be like, it's Ellie, it's me. And then, like, when she's able to, like, see him, she's just so relieved. And she's obviously tearing up. There's blood all over her. And when Joel grabs her, like pulls her in for a hug, and he goes, I got you, baby girl. I'm like, oh, God. I love these two. And they love each other. So they are capturing this relationship perfectly, where they're two absolute survivors. And they love each other. Like, they love each other. Like, that is a father figure to Ellie, and that is his daughter. Like, that Ellie is his daughter that he was able to find after the end of the world, where he lost the only thing that matters, day one of the end of the world. And he was able to find that again. So that's why next week's episode is going to be something truly beautiful. For those who have never played the game, it's going to blow people's minds. Like, I can't wait. Unfortunately, it's going to be a much shorter episode. It's supposed to be 45 minutes or 49 minutes, so that's not much shorter. It's like in that ballpark, but of course we've been getting these hour-long episodes, and I would like this one to be longer, but if they're able to get everything right within this last story sequence from the game, I'm so ready. The final minutes of this show is gonna blow people's minds. In terms of what Joel does, and then this amazing dialogue between Joel and Ellie. Yeah. But, guys, I think that's going to do it. I love this episode. I don't think I'm missing anything too big. Trying to think, of course, the music was phenomenal. One of the best scores out there on any TV show. The acting, superb. The cinematography is gorgeous. Guys, again, I think this is my favorite episode so far. I think next episode has mad potential to be my favorite, especially when we're gonna see what Joel's gonna do, and knowing what he does, and he's able. I'm just so ready. If you play the game, you understand his character at this point, and what he has been through, and what he's going to do is gonna blow your minds. But all right, guys. And I'm going to cut it off here. I'm Schmook. Again, I'm loving this show. I hope you are too. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can stay tuned for our last episode. Going live for episode 9 of The Last of Us. But all right, guys. Had fun. We'll talk soon.